Ann Arbor Inclusive is produced in part with the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues and CTN. The views and opinions expressed in the show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Commission or CTN. For more information about the Commission on Disability Issues, visit a2gov.org/disability resources. If you have program topic suggestions, please email a2disabilityissues@gmail.com.
This is Tom Holtland. I'm your host of Ann Arbor Inclusive, a program of the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues. Today, we're going back in time and we are beginning to visit some of our former guests. Today, we're going to be interviewing Kate Melcher from Fisher House in Michigan. We first visited Fisher House when it was a concept. They were still looking for a site to build the house. But now it's up and running on the VA campus in Ann Arbor. And I'm happy to introduce Kate Melcher. Kate, welcome to Ann Arbor Inclusive.
Thank you so much for having Fisher House back on your program.
Sure. So for viewers that might not be familiar with Fisher House, what is it and what does it do?
It's a temporary home away from home for the family and caregivers of hospitalized veterans. If veterans have to come to the VA in Ann Arbor for extended care, if they live far enough away, usually about 50 miles or more, the Fisher House hosts their family for as long as medically necessary at no charge to the family.
Wow. Sort of the military's answer to the Ronald McDonald homes?
That's a great way to put it. While we're not affiliated with that program, it is a very nice analogy.
Yes, yeah. So why do we need a Fisher House in Michigan?
Because there's more than 600,000 veterans and service members that live here in Michigan. And because not all of them are accessing the care that they've earned. We're finding that with a Fisher House, some of those veterans who've been putting off treatment and putting off appointments, they're starting to come to VA because now they can bring their spouse or their family member or their caregiver. It's making a difference in the care that we're delivering. And, I brought a video with me today. It's actually of a Fisher House friend. Her name is Sergeant Ellie Marks. And even if you don't know a veteran in person, you might know a veteran from watching television. This particular veteran was in the Paralympics and she won multiple medals, gold, silver, and bronze in swimming in Tokyo this year. So don't take my word for how important a Fisher House is. Listen to Sergeant Ellie Marks, who stayed in a Fisher House 3 times to heal from her injuries. Some are more obvious than others, but she recovered from all of them through having her family with her at a Fisher House.
And she really went full circle with the Paralympics. Let's take a look at that video.
I'm the soldier first and then an athlete. I've had the fortune of staying at a Fisher House on 3 separate occasions.
The biggest thing about Fisher House is the moment you walk through the doors, you're home. It's just about people being together and helping each other and healing through community.
The love and support that I got while I was there changed my life.
Wow, that's amazing. I had not heard of her, but I think I'm going to go back and look up her performance, if you will, in the Paralympics. That's really something. Can you tell us how the Fisher House mission began?
Sure. It all started with a man named Zachary Fisher. Zachary and his wife, Elizabeth, they're from New York, and Zachary's family business was in construction. He was injured before World War II, so he was never able to serve in the military on his own, but his wife was a USO girl, and he and his wife committed the rest of their lives to not only founding, but supporting military and veteran causes. So in 1990, Zachary and Elizabeth were visiting the Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and Admiral and Mrs. Trost were giving a bit of a tour and talking about the needs of the medical facility. And Mrs. Trost said, "Elizabeth, I need to show you something." And they walked out into the parking lot and they saw families that were literally living in their cars. These were families that couldn't imagine being anywhere else but by their loved one's side. And they couldn't afford a hospital in Washington, D.C. So they did what they knew best. And so Zachary and Elizabeth decided that they were going to solve that problem, that military family members, veteran family members should not be staying in their cars. We
You
owe
think?
our service members everything, and we want to make sure that they're well taken care of. So Zachary Fisher went to the Department of Defense and said, I'm going to solve this problem for you. And immediately the Secretary of Defense said, great, write us a check and we'll start building. And Zachary Fisher said, no, that's not how this is going to work. I'm a builder. I can get an architect. My family knows how to do this. Let me build you something beautiful, something that is worthy of the service of our men and women in uniform. That's exactly what they started doing in 1990. There are now 91 active Fisher houses all over the United States and overseas.
Wow.
The Fisher House that opened in Ann Arbor in June of 2020 is house number 87.
Wow. So I guess I bet there is a really great Fisher House at Walter Reed.
Believe it or not, there's not just one. That's where the first one was, but there's now a whole campus. There are actually 5 Fisher houses that are there to support the Bethesda Walter Reed community.
Wow. Wow. How many rooms are in Fisher House? Like the one here in Michigan?
Sure. The typical Fisher house has 16 private family suites. There are some Fisher houses that have only 8, and there are some as large as 21. But the Fisher family felt that it was really important to kind of hit that sweet spot, to meet the need, but to make sure that the family members all knew each other and that it felt like home. It's meant to be a brick and mortar support system, not a hotel. 16 families is just right. Plenty of room to meet that need, but the families can break bread together. They can talk about their experience in the hospital. They can mourn together. All of the things that you would do with your extended family, Fisher House families are doing that in kitchens in 91 Fisher houses all over the world.
It's essentially peer-to-peer mentoring.
Exactly. You know, when we were in the service, we were all issued families every single time we went to a new unit. You know, your spouses and kids and loved ones all got to know each other. And that was kind of how life was for us when we were all in uniform. But that stops when you take the uniform off. Fisher House, in a way, recreates that. When a Fisher House family has a medical need and they walk into that Fisher House, they're issued a family that includes 15 other families that will be staying with them while they're there.
Wow. So is there anything else you want to tell us about how the public-private partnership works?
Absolutely. That Fisher House that's now standing in Ann Arbor, that was built with 100% private gifts and grants. And that started way back when Zachary Fisher said, I'm going to build this. When you build with private gifts and grants, it's not the lowest bidder. It's not the longest schedule. It's, you know, you get to build this beautiful state-of-the-art home. It's ADA compliant so that we've had wheelchair bound family members that have come and stayed. It's not a clinical environment, but we do want it to be comfortable for anyone coming to support their loved one in the hospital. But once that house is built, Fisher House Foundation literally gives the keys to the VA. They said, VA, here is a gift for you. On accepting it, we'd like you to promise to keep it looking this way so that every veteran family that comes here, even decades from now, has the same experience as the first family who arrived here in June. Since June of 2020, in the first 15 months of operation, that house has hosted over 2,000 families during a pandemic.
Right here in Michigan, right here at the VA in Ann Arbor?
At VA Ann Arbor, that particular house has served over 2,000 families in 15 months of operation during a pandemic.
Gosh.
Even when occupancy was limited, they were still able to serve 2,000 families. It's incredible.
Well, I come from the hotel industry, and it was all about occupancy rates. And it sounds like you guys have a phenomenal occupancy rate here in Ann Arbor.
That's right. You know, I often joke because a lot of people say, Fisher House, what is that? And it's because we don't pay to advertise. You know, it's word of mouth. We like to keep our costs low so that over 90 cents on every single donor dollar goes directly into that house. So because we don't advertise, and because even when I was on active duty, I didn't know what a Fisher House was. Most Fisher House managers are told in the first year, occupancy is going to be relatively low, maybe 35, right, maybe 40%. That's what our Fisher House manager should expect here in Ann Arbor. She hit that mark in the first month. She's now
Wow.
operating closer to 80%. And there are several nights every single month where she reaches out to Fisher House, Michigan to ask if we can put a family up in a hotel. We don't ever want to turn away an eligible family, and we're happy to pinch hit from time to time. But if she ends up with occupancy like this month after month after month, I imagine that the VA in Ann Arbor will be applying for a second Fisher House.
Wow. So what that tells us is there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of veterans that are surfacing that need services from the hospital, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, we've been approved to build a house in Detroit, which will be Michigan's second Fisher House.
Okay.
And the need that's being demonstrated in Ann Arbor is just redoubling our efforts to make sure that veterans have that same access in Detroit.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
mission continues. We're supporting the folks inside the Ann Arbor house, and we're getting ready to build a second house, this time to serve the Detroit VA.
What's the status of the Detroit home?
Right now, the VA is doing due diligence on 4 different parcels of land. You know, the basic rule is if it's not close and if it's not safe, it's not a Fisher House. So Fisher House Foundation and the VA have some high standards about where to put that house. So we're being as patient as possible. We want to get that house built, but we want to make sure that it's right for the families. So the VA is, you know, checking with the historic office for the state and with the EPA to make certain that there's no environmental challenges. But when the land is available, Fisher House Foundation will start building, and they know what they're doing. They've done this 91 times. And from the time there was a shovel in the ground in Ann Arbor, it was less than a year before families were staying inside.
That's amazing.
So
and have you said the square footage?
It's roughly 14,000 square feet.
Wow.
That sounds huge, but it still feels like a home. It really is an intimate, very warm setting. Not only does Fisher House Foundation build the home, they also do all of the interior design. You know, when you look at the art on the walls, it's all bespoke. The black and white photos are of Michigan. The spirit of Detroit is actually in the Ann Arbor Fisher House. The State Theater is there. There's some agrarian photos because our state looks like that too.
Yeah.
And the paintings are also bespoke. It has these beautiful blues and greens of Michigan, and the accents in the house feel like fall. Our leaves are changing right now, and you know, the golds and the reds that you see from the leaves changing, those are in our Fisher House too. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about. If a Fisher House is full, no vacancy, did you say that you put people up in hotels?
Yes, all of the reservations and all of the eligibility requirements, all of those are handled by the VA staff. You know, when the keys are given to the VA, one of their other promises is that they will staff it with VA employees. So they handle the referral process, and occasionally the Fisher House manager has an eligible family and there's no room at the inn. So she calls us, we're a private 501c3, and we can pay for a hotel for that family member. More often than not, it's just one night. It might be more on occasion. You know, April tries to get families into that house as quickly as possible. But, you know, my board of directors said, look, when a Fisher House family arrives at the Fisher House, they should want for nothing. We're going to keep those refrigerators stocked, those pantries stocked. There's laundry, soap, whatever they need, toiletries, even some gift cards to go to Walmart and get some clothing, because some of these family members come in an emergent situation.
I bet.
They bring the clothes on their back, and we want to make sure that they have what they need to feel comfortable so that they can support their loved one. And that doesn't stop at the Fisher House door. It stops at hotels downtown if we have to.
Sounds like you guys have thought of everything for loved ones of veterans getting medical attention.
You know, this program has been in operation more than 30 years, and it's not us that thought of everything. It's the 30 years and the 90 other Fisher Houses that have been doing this forever. The first Fisher House, I'm sure, had some fits and starts that we didn't have to worry about because they've done it and they've learned the lessons and they've passed it along, not only through VA channels, through the manager training, but through Friends of Fisher House conferences where we can learn best practices for how to support an active Fisher House.
Okay. So you mentioned another thing. You mentioned active duty for yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became involved?
Sure. I am an Army veteran, and I actually came off of active duty because I had a family member that needed some medical attention, and we were relocating to make all of that possible. And that loved one was in surgery, and I was in a position where I was no longer an Army captain. I was an Army spouse. We had moved from 2 different Army bases to an Air Force base because of the base realignment commission. And honestly, if you're Army and on an Air Force base for the first time, it's like a foreign land. You don't speak the same language. The acronyms don't mean the same thing. So I was under a tremendous amount of stress and worried about my loved one who was having surgery. And so instead of having a full-blown panic attack in the waiting room, I decided to just take a walk. And I left that Air Force hospital, and the first thing I saw was the most beautiful federal building I'd ever seen in my life. And I immediately copped an attitude because the Air Force guys are spoiled, right? They get everything. They get beautiful buildings like this. Oh, that must be a general's house. But I get closer and there's no stars on the lawn. It's actually called the Zachary and Elizabeth Fisher House. And I still couldn't focus my brain on what was actually happening. And I'm not shy, so I decided to knock on the door to find out what it was. And, it's a very warm woman with a thick Southern accent opened the door. And I said, I'm sorry to intrude. I don't know what a Fisher House is, but, and before I could even explain what was going on, she had snatched me up. She goes, "Baby, this is a Fisher House, honey. You're home. I just made some coffee. How you take it? You want cream or sugar? You want to sit? You want to cry? We can talk. I can leave you alone. Let me call the hospital. What's your husband's name? Let me find out. They'll call me when he's out of." On and on and on. How you take your coffee? I didn't rate staying in a Fisher House because we didn't live too far away. I didn't know what a Fisher House was, but I sat there with her for an hour, and I had sort of a makeshift mom. I had a military mom that was there to just sit with me and take care of me and tell me that it was going to be okay.
Wow.
And that hour completely changed my life. Things have changed since then. And I no longer have that relationship, but I moved back home to rekindle relationship with my extended family. My dad was sick, and I decided that I'd been away for 20 years and it was time for me to come back and be a part of his life.
Okay.
And when I moved back here, I decided that I needed to find work, and I looked on Indeed, and the first thing I saw was that Fisher House, Michigan was hiring. And I said, well, these folks don't know it, but that's my job.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
And so what do you do for Fisher House, Michigan?
I am the executive director of Fisher House, Michigan, which is a private foundation, and we raise all kinds of funding, private gifts and grants to not only support the construction of Fisher houses all around Michigan, but to support the operations and to support the families inside once the houses are open to veterans.
So you're also the director of development.
That's right. We are a very lean staff. It's just me and my executive assistant and chief of staff, Suzanne Schaffrath. The two of us carry out the statewide mission with the support of an incredibly active and diverse board. I feel so blessed to have a dozen of the most passionate people working on this board. We've had dentists and attorneys and retired folks and veterans and everything in between. We want to do it right. We want to make sure that everything is above board. We invite people to review our financials. All of that's available on our website at fisherhousemichigan.org.
Okay.
Please take a look at what we're doing. I encourage you because you'll want to get involved too.
Okay. Let's take a look at a video that you brought that is sort of an overview of, it's nice footage of Fisher House. So let's do that now.
Staying at a hotel is not the same thing as staying at the Fisher House.
The Fisher House, I know, is a huge part of Blanche's recovery.
For somebody like my husband or any military person, for them to know that their family members are being taken care of, that's a huge burden off of them, so they can concentrate on their therapies.
Just having that assurance that no matter what, as long as we were there for Anson, that someone would be there to take care of us. It took so much weight off our shoulders.
That's great. It's a really good visual to see how things work and to see the beauty of these houses that are Fisher houses. Can you tell me anything that stands out in your mind as one of your favorite stories, or something remarkable that's happened in your career with Fisher House?
The most remarkable thing is getting the opportunity to go into one of these private family suites and to read a leather-bound journal. There's a journal that Ken Fisher signs for each of the rooms in every Fisher house around the world, and it gives the families the opportunity to write a little bit of their journey or express their gratitude. And there was one journal entry that I read that was 3 pages long, handwritten, single-spaced, and it happened to be a Vietnam veteran who was staying there with his wife, and he'd been putting off treatment until his wife finally said, "There's a Fisher house, we're going, I'm going to stay with you." I would imagine that he probably put off treatment because of what he wrote next, which was that when he came back from Vietnam, he knew what he had done there. He knew what his platoon had done, and he was proud. And he very quickly learned that he shouldn't be proud.
Right.
That he shouldn't talk about what he did, that he shouldn't tell stories, that he should take his ribbons off and stick them in a drawer for 50 years and not say another word about it. But he said when he finally came to the VA and they crossed the threshold of our Fisher house in Ann Arbor, he said for the first time in 50 years, he actually felt the honor and gratitude that he thought that he had earned. He'd
That's
waited
amazing.
50 years to feel that way. And bless his heart, he's had to come for multiple episodes of care. The very next time that he came, he was wearing a Vietnam veteran cap and a jacket. He was proud to be a Vietnam veteran. He had found his family again, his military family again. He found his pride. He started talking with other veterans in the Fisher House and in the hospital about their experiences. He's finding a place to heal beyond the medical issues.
Yeah.
He's healing his heart. It's because of Fisher House.
Yeah. I imagine you had a person that is just as hospitable as the woman that you ran into with that first Fisher House experience for you.
Of course, April LaRock is the Fisher House manager, and she has a social work background. And she's got a whole bunch of veterans on her staff. The custodial staff, they're all veterans. And when they clean a room, they leave a little sign with their name and the insignia from their branch of service, so the families can feel connected to even the housekeeping staff.
Wow.
The assistant manager still serves in the Army National Guard. He's a chaplain with them, and he just came back from deployment. There's another assistant there who his family experienced a Fisher House firsthand. He was injured in Iraq, and his family was flown to Landstuhl, Germany, and stayed in a Fisher House there while John was receiving medical care. So everyone in that Fisher House, from the VA perspective, they live and breathe the mission. They came to it from all different ways, but they are there to serve with compassion and with honor. And I am so proud to be affiliated with that house and with that team.
That's awesome. So you talked about the fact that this Fisher House was built primarily with private donations and not government grants. What is your greatest challenge at Fisher House, Michigan?
Our greatest challenge is that when we say Fisher House, not everybody knows what it means. Especially when we're in Detroit, people say, "Oh, the Fishers." Well, there's a Fisher building and a Fisher theater. Why do you need a Fisher House? Different family, different mission.
Yeah.
So when people hear about Fisher House, they want to get involved. People want to give, but just hearing about Fisher House is part of the challenge. So we appreciate the gift of gab more than anything. Sharing what you've learned on this program today, sharing what you find on our website, fisherhousemichigan.org, or following us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Fisher House Mich.
Very cool. And how can Michiganders support Fisher House, whether it be, I'm sure, financially, but are there other ways?
Well, right now is a great time to support Fisher House because we're in the middle of our Patriots Pledge matching period. So whether you're able to give $1, $100, $1,000, whatever it is, it'll be matched 100% dollar for dollar up to $500,000. We've had tremendous support from foundations like the Towsley Foundation and corporations like First Nation Group and local wealth management groups like the Stutzman Moore Wealth Management Group. All of these folks wanted to make more of their major gifts, and they pooled their blessings together and said, we want to challenge the folks who are supporting this house to match what we've done. And that's what they're doing right now. So we have the opportunity to raise $1 million for Fisher House this fall with your support. They can also help by attending events, by sharing our content on social media, and by talking to their neighbors about what they've learned, sitting in a church pew, coaching your kid's soccer game, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Find out who the veterans are in your world, ask their stories, ask what you can do to give back. This is a great way to give back to the military and veteran folks in your life.
That's amazing. Even down to if someone makes $100 contribution, they're really giving 200.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. So that is fisherhousemichigan.org.
Correct.
Okay. All right. What about events? Do you have events coming up?
You know, in the past, we did a huge theater style event called Stories of Service. And unfortunately, COVID is precluding us from doing such a big event. So we're doing things virtually. We are supporting third-party proud supporters that do events for us. So look for the pig roasts and the pancake fests and all those kinds of things, because there are a bunch of groups that are fundraising for us, and we would love for you to support them as well.
And you can find those on your website.
Yes.
Those events.
Yes.
Well, Kate, I could talk to you forever about Fisher House because mentoring is near and dear to my heart. And I know how powerful it is when you put two folks together with a like experience.
Yes.
So I can imagine what you guys are doing at Fisher House is so important. And real quick, what about tours? Can people see Fisher House?
The Fisher House is on a medical campus, and the folks that are in that house are going back and forth to their hospitalized loved one every day.
Yeah.
So we need to keep outside exposure to an absolute minimum.
Sure.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to ask. You know, you're welcome to call us and see if we can't coordinate something with the VA, but realize that protecting those families is our #1 priority. So regarding tours, the Fisher House sits on a VA medical campus, which means the families that are there, they're back and forth and caring for their hospitalized loved ones. So our #1 priority has to be protecting their health. So we did not do a big public dedication celebration like we had hoped, and tours are at an absolute minimum.
Yeah.
But in special circumstances, we can make exceptions in coordination with the VA. So we invite you to email us or to call us at 518-481-0552.
Well, Kate, I could talk to you forever about this, and I look forward to a relationship with you and Fisher House. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this powerful resource in our community. This is Ann Arbor Inclusive, and we are a program of the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues. I'm Tom Hoatland, and we'll see you next time on Ann Arbor Inclusive.